So the two witnesses are going to be here for 1,260 days, prophesying in sackcloth, and they have the power to overcome anybody who tries to kill them, so on and so forth. And people go, well, there's 3.5 years ministry of the two witnesses, and then after they minister, there's 42 months reign of the beast. That's 7 years. So isn't that the 70th week of Daniel? Okay, well, I agree, it's 7 years, but the two witnesses ministry is not mentioned in Daniel, which is an odd thing, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can fit the two witnesses ministry and you still don't have a 7-year, what we call tribulation, and you don't have to get the timing for believers from the book of Daniel. It's all in Revelation. Okay, our timeline is from Revelation. So if you're a Jew, your understanding of the timeline for Messiah is going to be from the book of Daniel. It's also from other places too, and I invite you to check out my playlist on basically the end times for Israel. It's a really good video series. I wish more people would watch it because it's so precious when it comes to the nation of Israel and God's plan for his people. But Daniel is an Old Testament book that's geared toward the timeline for Israel. The Messiah is going to come, and it's after 69 weeks of years, or 483 years, that Messiah would come. So I'm just assuming you've watched some of my other videos where I talk about how Jesus fulfilled that first 3.5 years of Daniel's 70th week. Okay, he came at the beginning of the 70th week. Okay, came at the beginning of that. And because we're talking about Shemitahs, we're talking about sabbatical years, we're talking about the way Jews would think about years. And if we're thinking in groups of 7 years, Jewish people would automatically think, oh, we're talking about sabbatical years. They always begin on the Feast of Trumpets. So Feast of Trumpets right here, that's when this new dispensation, if you want to call it, when God started dealing with Israel by bringing in John the Baptist, who is a type of Elijah, okay, of end time Elijah. John came in the spirit and power of Elijah. Okay, he was going to draw the hearts of the fathers to the children and the children to the fathers. That's why he was here as the forerunner for Christ. So John the Baptist had a ministry, and then one day he was manifested to Israel. All of a sudden people knew about him and he was baptizing. And then Jesus came on the scene, and I believe Jesus was baptized on the Day of Atonement. That's a day of an open heaven. That's when God the Father said, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." And that's when the Holy Spirit came down and settled on Jesus. So this is the beginning of the 70th week is about Jesus and what Jesus came to do in taking away sins, putting an end to transgression, so on and so forth, the stuff we read about in Daniel 9:24. So we had a 3.5 year ministry, and then it says that he put an end to sacrifice and offering. Some versions will say he caused sacrifice and offering to cease, or he put an end to it. The word for causing it to cease or end is actually the word where we get our word Sabbath. He caused them to be put to rest. He took the sacrifices and offerings from the Mosaic system, and he put them to rest through his death on the cross, his death and resurrection. Okay, and when he rose from the dead, he proved that God accepted the offering that he made. The 70th week of Daniel is actually divided into 2 parts, where he strengthens the covenant with many, and in the midst of the week puts an end to sacrifice and offering. And then we have this word and is a separator. It's separating whatever's happening from this part from what's happening on this part. Jesus used this same example in Luke chapter 4 when he's quoting from Isaiah 61 that says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to preach good news to the poor and to proclaim liberty to the captives and sight to the blind, and to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord." But the rest of Isaiah says, "and the day of vengeance of our God." Okay, well, Jesus didn't quote that part of Isaiah 61. Why? Because that last half of Isaiah 61 verse 2 has to do with the end times. And Jesus' ministry is divided into two sections: his first coming and the events that are involved with his second coming. All right? So if the 70th week begins on the Feast of Trumpets, it's going to end in a Jubilee year on the Day of Atonement. And that's how we know what day Jesus is going to return. Okay, so this is not the day of the Lord, though. The day Jesus returns is not the day of the Lord, just so you know. So it's okay that we know what day Jesus will come back on. There's only one day we don't know anything about it, and that is when the day of the Lord will start. Okay, now we know the 70th week is not a mysterious week because we know the day it's going to start, because we're dealing with Sabbath years or sabbatical years. So the first half of Daniel's 70th week is over for the Jews, and they only have the last half. And Daniel chapter 12 talks about how Michael will arise, and then there'll be the worst time in Israel's history. There'll be nothing like it ever before or ever coming after it. And when Daniel says, how long is that going to be? The angel who was over the waters, who I believe is a pre-incarnate Christ, raises his hand and swears by him who lives forever and ever that it would be for a time, times, and half a time. And in Daniel 7, again, we see the phrase time, times, and half a time, which is 3.5 years. In Revelation, we're told that this amount of time is 42 months. This is when the beast is going to reign. Now you'll notice that sacrifice and offering were put to rest over on this side. And then the passage goes on to talk about the person that we call the Antichrist. And it says, and, which is that separating word, on the wing of abomination shall one come who makes desolate. So Jesus talked about that in Matthew 24, verse 15, about the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. Paul talks about it in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and I think it's verse 4, about the man of sin going into the temple of God and declaring that he's God. Neither one of those passages says anything about sacrifices. Why? Because Jesus put the sacrifices to rest. All it says is that on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate. There's somebody who is one, okay, he's called one who makes desolate, is going to go into the temple. Okay, we know there will be a rebuilt temple because of what Jesus said, that he's going to stand in the holy place. And we know that from what Paul says, that the man of sin will take his seat in the temple of God. And we know that from what Revelation says, that there'll be a temple that John is told to measure in Revelation chapter 11. Okay, so this is what is left for Israel. They only have this amount of time left, 3.5 years, according to the book of Daniel and according to what's recorded that Jesus and Paul said. Okay, so now here's the question: is what about the two witnesses, and what about us, and what about our rapture? I don't see, there's nothing about a rapture here in this passage. That's what Revelation is for. That's what the book of Revelation is for. Revelation never talks about a 7-year tribulation. It talks about 10 days of tribulation in Revelation chapter 2. It talks about how the people who entertain Jezebel will be thrown into tribulation. We're told that the white-robed martyrs have come out of great tribulation, but that isn't necessarily this right here, because Revelation has different tribulations, okay? And don't conflate whatever tribulation we're seeing in Revelation, because there's a whole bunch of them, with what Jesus called, then there will be great tribulation. Okay, so not all great tribulations are for the same group of people, and not all of them happen at the same time, which is something people have done, is anytime they see great tribulation, they automatically assume it's this. You have to read everything in its context. Everything is interpreted by its context, not just because you see those words there. All right, so what does Revelation have to say? Well, Revelation is going to tell us the things that happen before this right here. Before this starts up, which is really the abomination of desolation, that's going to start the last 3.5 years. Revelation tells us the bigger story, and it's going to tell us all the stuff that happens on this side of the abomination of desolation. Okay, what is one of the first things that Revelation tells us about the end times? Well, it tells us that there is a great sign in heaven in Revelation 12, 1 and 2. And this is an astronomical alignment. It happened in 2017. So what year is it right now? It's 2024 right now, okay? We've got 7 years right here. Have we been raptured? Is there any tribulation or anything going on? Any seals opened or anything? The answer to that is no. And so far we've got 7 years here, and we know we've got another 3.5 over there. So far we're actually looking at 10.5 years, and we haven't even counted the other events that are going to take place before this date right here. Okay, can you follow that? We're not talking about 7 years of tribulation. Okay, if we were, we'd have 3.5 years here and 3.5 years here. But we already have 7. There's already 7 years here. And the great sign is the pin that's in the book of Revelation. This is the sign that lets us know we're in the end times. That the next sign that we're going to look for is actually the sign of the dragon that talks about our rapture and the circumstances that are going to surround the rapture of the male child, who will be caught up to God and to his throne, and then appear as the 24 elders seated on thrones in heaven. Okay, so let's talk about the 2 witnesses. Okay, I'm going to leave this in here. All right, the 2 witnesses are going to be here for 1,260 days. That's the amount of time that they minister, is 1,260 days. And then they're going to be killed by the beast who ascends from the bottomless pit. That's the Antichrist after he's risen from the dead and been indwelt by Apollyon, who's been released from the bottomless pit. Okay, so this is the day the 2 witnesses die. And then for 3.5 days, they lie in the streets. And then on the same day as the abomination of desolation, they are going to come back to life again, and they're going to ascend into heaven. And it happens to be the same day as the second woe, which, if you know what your woes are, this is the 6th trumpet. The 6th trumpet is when 1/3 of mankind is killed. The 5th trumpet is when the pit is opened and Apollyon comes out. So they go up, and then it says there's a great earthquake, and 1/10 of Jerusalem falls, 7,000 people are killed. The second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is soon to come. The second woe is past. Why? Because it only lasts 1 hour on one day. It's the hour, day, month, and year that God has already determined to destroy Mystery Babylon. Okay? Mystery Babylon is going to be destroyed this day. It's the day of vengeance of our God. That's when that happens. It's not the day of the Lord. It's the day of the vengeance of our God. And it's vengeance on the harlot and the harlot system. Okay, so what we have here is 1,260 days that the 2 witnesses minister. All right, so what is the job of the 2 witnesses? And this, I've gone over this a lot of times in other videos. People have weird ideas, and it's what I call kind of storybook, coloring book ideas of the 2 witnesses. If you go online and you type in 2 witnesses and you want to get images of them, you're going to see 2 guys standing there looking like Old Testament guys, and fire is coming out of their mouth. Literal fire is not going to come out of their mouth. It says that fire comes out of their mouth, but it's a quote. It's an allusion back to Jeremiah, where God says, "Is not my word like fire?" So they're speaking God's words, which have great power. And when they speak, basically they can do anything, okay? Their words have effect. Their words are powerful. and they're going to be speaking God's words. The two witnesses minister to Israel. Okay, I hope we can all agree on that the job of the two witnesses is like that of John the Baptist, who came in the spirit and power of Elijah to prepare people to receive Christ. The role of the two witnesses is to prepare Israelis to receive Christ. Now, there's two groups of what I'm going to euphemistically call Jews that need to be prepared. One group is the 144,000 who are actually going to be believers. These are going to be Christians, and they are going to be removed before the hour of trial, which is this hour right here, that the two witnesses ascend and a third of mankind is killed at the second woe. Okay, their job is to do kind of what Jesus did for 3.5 years, which was to minister to disciples to get them ready to believe that he was sent from God. Okay, read the Upper Room Discourse in John chapters 13 through 16. The second group are just random Israelis. These are the people that are going to have to flee when the two witnesses ascend into heaven and the mountain splits and they're going to go through the opening in the mountain. And a lot of people think they're going to go to Petra, but personally, I think a better case can be made for Pella, which is where Elijah and John the Baptist and Jesus and his disciples went when they were, when things got too hot in Jerusalem or some other place. They went and stayed in this remote part of what was called the Decapolis. So these are two groups that the two witnesses are going to minister to. And it's not easy to change people's mind about tradition and what the Bible teaches and so on and so forth, but that's their job, is to bring these people to a place where they can either come to a place of faith in Christ, or at the time of the abomination, they will flee into the wilderness. Their job is to turn the hearts of fathers to the children and children to the fathers, lest I come and smite the land with a curse. Now, people say, well, when the two witnesses are here, everybody's going to know it. Everybody's going to see them. Really? Is that what it says? For the full 3.5 years, everybody's going to know that they're here? I don't think so. I think they have the ability to do any kind of miracle or sign that they need to do to stay alive for the full 1,260 days. And their main job that we may see or we may not see, it's most likely a fairly low-key kind of ministry, because if it gets to be big key, they're going to be persecuted. And then you can't disciple people if you're always on the run or you're always, calling down plagues. Right? So the goal is to get these people in a place where they can receive Christ. That's the 144,000. It's a repeat of what's going on in the first century. It's a repeat of what we saw happening the first 3.5 years of Daniel's 70th week. But it's longer than 3.5 years, okay? It's been at least 7 so far since the Revelation 12 sign that placed us in the book of Revelation. We're waiting for the second sign, the sign of the dragon. Okay, so the primary job of the two witnesses is to make disciples. It's calling people to repentance, particularly the Jews. Maybe if you're in Israel, you might have bumped into one of the two witnesses on the street. Okay, and people say, well, aren't they wearing sackcloth? Okay, remember, clothing in Revelation is primarily symbolic. It's going to tell you something about the person. And it may be literal, like wearing white robes. Wearing sackcloth simply means that you are in a mode of repentance, that you are looking to turn back to God, which is what the whole thing with John the Baptist was all about, is bringing people to a place of repentance. All right, so the second thing that the two witnesses are going to do, and I've talked about this in a lot of videos as well, the symbolism of Revelation 11, it calls them two lampstands and the two candlesticks, which is an allusion back to Zechariah chapter 4, which also mentions the two candlesticks and lampstands, which talk about the rebuilding of the second temple by Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest and others as well. Not by might nor by power, but by my spirit. And that Zerubbabel will lay the foundation, and he'll also put on the capstone, that it'll happen quickly, swiftly. It's the temple building illusion that is the two candlesticks and the two lampstands, the temple building aspect of the part of the ministry of the two witnesses is to erect that end time temple, which it isn't on Mount Moriah. We're told it's on Mount Zion. It's on Mount Zion. Mount Zion and Mount Moriah, two different mountains. And the tabernacle of David was on Mount Zion, and it was just a tent with the ark in it. And we're told in Revelation what that earthly temple is going to look like, because it'll be a reflection of the temple, heavenly temple, that we see in Revelation. The earthly temple reflects whatever's going on in the heavenly temple at that time. So we're not going to take the tabernacle of Moses and conflate that with the end time temple. We're not going to take the temple of Solomon and say, well, that's the end time temple, that's what it has to look like. No, it's going to reflect exactly the temple that we see in the book of Revelation. I've done a number of videos on what that temple will look like. I've done videos on the role of the two witnesses in the rebuilding of this, what people call the tribulation temple. Okay, and there aren't going to be any sacrifices in it. Why? Because sacrifices and offering were what Christ put an end to. So there'll be a temple that he will go into, the man of sin will go into, but it has nothing to do with sacrifices. There's no sacrifices going on. It's on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. Okay, and that's when Christ returns at the end of the 70th week, on the Day of Atonement. All right, so we can actually know when this date is just by taking whatever the date is for the Day of Atonement and subtracting 1,260 days. Okay. So a lot of these dates are actually knowable, which is why I have in my description box a link to key dates for 2024 through 2028. So that's if the rapture is in 2024, Jesus will return in 2028 on the Day of Atonement. So we can know what the date is for this. And if Jesus returns in 2028, the date for this, I believe, is the 19th of April. In 2025. That's the day when a third of mankind will be killed. That's the day of the sixth trumpet, second woe, when 4 angels are released from the river Euphrates. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the end of World War III. So everybody always wants to know, so where's our rapture and all of this? Okay. Remember, Revelation is talking about the things that go on primarily on this side, up until the destruction of the harlot, when the beast begins to reign. And then we have basically chapters 13 and 14 and 15 and 16 that talk about what's going on over here. 17 and 18 are again talking about the relationship between the harlot and the beast. That's something that happens right here on the abomination of desolation, sixth trumpet event. Here we are. The great sign happened in 2017. We have a bunch of time that's going by. And I believe that our rapture would probably be this fall. Okay, that's the first rapture. And the 144,000, they have their own rapture. They're kept from the hour of trial that comes on the whole earth if they overcome. Okay, so the first rapture, the late date for that is the 20th of November of 2024. So really any time between the 8th day of Tabernacles and November 20th of 2024 can be our rapture. There's exactly 5 months here between the late date for our rapture and when the beast begins to reign. And before we are raptured, there'll be probably about 1 month when we'll actually overlap, or we'll see the two witnesses. Okay, they'll be setting up the temple over here. We'll have about a month. But here's the thing. This is in the context of a war, a huge war in Israel. So will communications be up? Will people even be able to see it? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there will be so much confusion going on in the world. And I think the plan is to disrupt communication so that when the time comes for us to be changed and be raptured, there won't be communication going on. After the two witnesses are killed, here's what it says. For 3 days and a half, men from peoples, tribes, and tongues and nations gaze at their dead bodies. So there'll be people there from all over the world who will actually look at their dead bodies. A lot of people have said, well, this will be on CNN and, Fox News and all of that. No, it's not what it says. It says that people from all over the world are going to be able to see their dead bodies. In other words, there'll be people from all over the world who will be in Jerusalem at that time, which isn't unusual because it's just prior to Passover. And if there's a huge war that's been going on, there's going to be people from all over who are there, who will see their dead bodies and refuse to let them be placed in a tomb. And those who dwell on the earth, okay, and those are earth dwellers, those are hybrids, those are the non-human race. Those who dwell on earth will rejoice over them and make merry and exchange presents, because these two prophets had been a torment to those who dwell on earth. So the two witnesses are not tormenting like people. Their torment is aimed and geared toward and focused on the hybrids. Okay? Earth dwellers are hybrids. It's that hybrid race that's mixed itself in with humanity, the tares among the wheat. Revelation is written for believers, and it talks about the stuff that's going to be happening prior to the abomination of desolation. And so far, there's at least 7 years just on this side of the abomination of desolation. 7 years from the time of the Revelation 12 sign to where we're at now in 2024. And we're not looking for someone to confirm a covenant. We're not looking for a peace covenant. We're not looking for the temple that people are going to, that the Jews are going to be making sacrifices in, animal sacrifices. We don't care about a red heifer. We don't care about any of that because none of that is part of the real story. Okay, it's all red herrings and meant to get you off track. The sacrifices and offerings were taken care of by Christ when he died on the cross. Now we're just waiting for the man of sin to go into the tabernacle. It's not even a permanent structure. It's a tabernacle that the two witnesses are going to erect, and it can be put up overnight. It is not a big deal. It's just a tent. And if you have a few guys helping out, a few of the 144,000 and, Moses and Elijah, and where the stuff is, where the golden altar of incense is, and where the Ark of the Covenant is, it just goes into the tent and bada bing, bada boom. It's all up and going in 24 hours. Okay. And then keeping that place holy and sacred is going to be the job of the two witnesses for the next few months. Once this big war in Israel takes place as part of the sign of the dragon, things are going to go absolutely ballistic here on earth. A third of the angels, I believe, that are Satan's angels, he'll leave 2/3 in heaven. A third will be cast to the earth. This huge war in Israel, the travail of the woman where she's all alone. And then we have basically the birth of the child when it looks like the war is over, because once labor's over, that's when the baby's born. The birth of the child is when believers, as firstborn sons, get our immortal bodies, not glorified bodies. We have to wait till we get to heaven for that. We have our immortal bodies. And then, like all firstborn sons, they're not offered or brought to God until the 8th day. So it's on the 8th day that will be caught up to God and to his throne. And in between the birth of the child and the catching away of the child, Satan, the dragon, is going to make war on the child, try to devour it. All right, and I've talked about this on many videos as well. All of the events are going to be so compressed here. They're so compressed in such a short amount of time. Jesus said that these are things that will quickly take place. They're not going to slowly roll out over the course of 7 years. They are going to quickly take place. They will take place so fast that if we didn't know about it ahead of time, there would be no way for people to understand the story here. All right, so understand that Revelation has a story that jives with the story we see in Daniel and other Old Testament passages, but our timeline does not come from Daniel's 70th week. It doesn't. Our timeline comes from Revelation, and there's a place where the two timelines coincide, but don't confuse them. Don't conflate them. They're not the same thing. So for some of you, this will be review. I hope it'll reinforce things you already know. And for others of you, you'll go, what did she just say? Watch the video again. I'm going to leave links to other videos in the description box. I'm going to leave a link to the important dates if our rapture is this fall. And that's if, okay? I think it's a very strong possibility that we'll be out of here this fall just from looking at things going on in the world. But if we're out of here 2024, Jesus will return in 2028 on the Day of Atonement. It's not a mysterious date. That's a day we do know that Jesus will return on the Day of Atonement in some year. And I'm hoping it's in 2028. I've got tons and tons of videos. I've got a very in-depth timeline of Revelation. A link to that's in the description box. I have a one-page timeline where it sort of condenses everything. So make a trip down to the description box. You can also get thumb drives that have a lot of my videos, show notes, timelines, so on and so forth. The link for that is in the description box as well. Also, we have a Discord channel, a little outpost of heaven. I'll leave a link. It's only good for about 3 days. And if you're interested in joining us over on a little outpost, we'd love to have you. We've got hundreds of people who are over there, and we have some of the best fellowship really on the internet. So leave a comment in the comment section, and we'll see you on another video. Till then, have a blessed day.